We're getting there, so I'm sorry that we're running us behind because it's my fault. I went to the wrong. But anyway, well, I did this before. But before, I'm sending around the sign sheet, and one is coffee, cookies, any request with improved. Well, we get the, all the PowerPoints hooked up here and we get going. And these are pretty test around.
Yes.
Bathrooms are down the hall. If you go out of the library to your left, go to the hall.
Yep.
And then
Right.
the gate.
Yep, just past the gate, and right, and there's a lady somewhere.
What's that? Right.
Hi. How are you?
So you want to get steps?
Well, I have. It was in my car. Except for the coffee, we were like, you know, I ordered it ahead of time. So then I had the directions.
You're gonna want the lights off down the.
That'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, see.
Well, no, I keep using
All right, this is Matthew, did you know?
I haven't,
Matthew Crane?
I sort of figured this.
This is our
Yes, I
Bob.
matter, Matthew.
Mary's on her phone. And Matthew's gonna win.
So, excellent. Yep, we're live streaming now, so.
We are?
Yep, just so people know that
Okay.
we're in the process.
Okay, thanks. I thought about it. Well, mine is
Street here, so as the people talking, I should not just bring Yes.
Maybe.
Yes, live stream YouTube, yeah.
Did you get the list?
I did. So, we already had that list.
Here. Okay, great.
Hopefully, give you something nice.
That's okay, 'cause I'm not- I'll send you both. So you would check yourself with original one for everybody, we made changes to that too.
Yes. Green.
It is very colorful. Yes, it is. Okay, we're gonna, I guess we can get started.
Are you, can we bring up yours?
Again, welcome, thank you for coming. Thank you to the Mason Consolidated Schools. Daniel Billy, you are in charge of all the whole
Buildings and grounds.
buildings and grounds, so thank you for hosting us tonight. We're grateful. Thank you to Matthew Frame, who is with the Intermediate School District for Monroe County, and we're live streaming the meeting to YouTube. So people who couldn't come to the meeting here in the library could come to the meeting from their living room, family room, car, work. So I'd like to welcome everyone that also is participating from a remote location. So the agenda tonight, this is a public meeting, or this is actually the first public meeting that we're having about this particular project. So it's gonna quickly, we have an agenda. Does everybody have an agenda? We have some, okay. My name is Danielle Conroy, and I'm the Executive Director for the River Raisin Institute. We are in Monroe, Michigan. We are a nonprofit, and our mission is to work with other partners, to collaborate, to work in the schools, and to focus on building sustainable community. And so this particular project, this watershed management plan, was something that we were interested in applying for a grant to do because it is very much in line with our mission to work with partners to protect and restore our home, our watershed, our natural resources. And so we're delighted that we have so many wonderful partners to work with, and that we would like now the public as well to be informed about this, to participate, to give us feedback, to ask questions, and to help us shape and work in the process of looking at this watershed and finding out what we need to do to fix any problems. We know there are some, and what we need to do to protect it into the future. So tonight, this is what we're going to cover. Looks like a lot of points, but they don't all take a long time. We're going to just, again, why are we doing this? What is the reason for the project? And it is a process. Watershed management planning is a process. So we're at the beginning of the process for this particular watershed. So I'll show you where we are in that. What are the water quality concerns in this watershed? They are documented. They are specific. So we're going to share what those are. And then we have different presenters who are going to be talking about different technical dimensions or information that we all need to know about in order to make this a very fruitful process. So I'll be introducing them in a few minutes. And they will then be talking about what is a TIMDL. So, hold your breath until you find out what that is. That's going to be fun. And then what are we going to be doing in terms of environmental monitoring, on-the-ground inventory, and a public opinion survey of property owners in the watershed. And then we'll have time for your questions. And if you have questions of the presenters as we're going through it, that's fine to ask them at that point. We don't want to get too far off the topic. So if it looks like that's happening, then I'll just ask if we can hold that particular part of your question to the end so we can get through the whole agenda. Does that sound okay? Again, last April, we had a kickoff meeting. We invited the public. I have some letters if you want to read about it, to just announce that this project was launching and that the River Raisin Institute had received a grant from the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality called the 319 grant, non-point source grant, to develop a watershed management plan for SS LaPointe drain. So the reason for doing this is to address the water quality problems associated with non-point sources. So we're not sure what the sources are. We can't point to a facility or some industry facility. These are sources that we're not sure where it's coming from. So that's why it's called non-point source process. And we can explain a little bit more about that. I think it might be a little bit clearer when we talk about the environmental monitoring. This is the watershed, and you have a copy of this map, so we'll be talking about that a little bit more in detail when we get into some other parts of the meeting. It's about I forget now how many 18 square miles, something like that. I'm pretty sure it's in the notice, and I know I go back and forth between how many miles and how many other metrics, but that's it's in the public notice. I don't think it's on the survey. So we're going to come back to that in a minute. So this is just a picture of the process, but we're right at the beginning, where we're building partnerships. We're having meetings like this to invite you to participate in the process. We've already been meeting with a steering advisory committee and other partners who are working with us. And here's another. I'm going to read this because it's hard for you to see this from a distance, but the blue arrow on the side is where we are in the process. So we're really at the beginning of this. So the number one is building partnerships. Who are the stakeholders? So those are the property owners, the farmers, the people who live in the watershed, people who help keep the watershed, who are concerned about the quality of water in the watershed, people who have as their job to protect it or to do checking on a regular basis. For example, the county health department, people who use the the beaches, who fish, who boat. So we're building partnerships. We want to identify who are those key stakeholders, and have that group, the stakeholders, say, what are your concerns? What are the issues? What are the concerns? And what should be some of our goals to address those concerns? So we've been having meetings. We have a steering advisory group, and they've been meeting since the kickoff, since shortly after the kickoff meeting in April, to build this committee of stakeholders. So we have the Drain Commissioner's Office is represented, the County Health Department is represented, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, the Monroe County Planning Department. We have a gentleman who has a marina, who has said that he would like to be part of it, and it is open to other stakeholders. So we are wanting you to know about this. Oh, and the Conservation District Office is another partner, as well as the municipalities. So the City of Luna Pier, Erie Township, and LaSalle Township. They are all part of that steering committee. So we're going to be, as part of that, we want to conduct meetings like this, let people know about it, conduct the outreach. And then the second, number two, that it's called characterize the watershed. So define the watershed. You know, what is the land use? What is the land cover? What are issues within that watershed with respect to water quality? What are some of the practices that are occurring that are good practices? Are there some that could be implemented that people would want to know about? We also are gathering as much data that's already existing that has been collected by other either projects or other groups. So the DEQ has data, the DNR has data, you probably are aware of the I-75 reconstruction project that's with SEMCOG and the Department of Transportation. So they're doing all kinds of research in terms of the wetland cover, endangered species, runoff from roads and so on. They have a lot of data. We're trying to collect this and prior survey or prior testing of different sites within the watershed. So what did the test results show? So we're gathering that information so that we can describe what the condition of the watershed is. Once we look at what we already have, then we say, well, what else do we need? And we know we need some more information. So we're going to talk about how we're going to get that additional information, and then say, if these problems are existing, what are the causes of them? Or what do we think might be the causes? Let's try to figure that out. We don't know. So that's the purpose of this process. These are the water quality issues and locations that we know about in the SS LaPointe Drain watershed. That the beach, Luna Pier Beach on Lake Erie, has impairment of recreational use, both full body contact, like swimming, or partial body contact at different times of the year. So that means there's a problem there because people can get sick because they're elevated levels of E. coli. So that's a water quality issue and a concern. Two other ones that have been identified already are the impairment of the warm water fishery due to sewage, dissolved oxygen and phosphorus, and then also in the LaPointe Drain, impairment of other indigenous aquatic life and wildlife. So these are the issues that we are aware of and they relate to, and I don't know if Molly's going to talk about this at all. You'll pick up on this, but so because of that, this watershed is considered an impaired water body because it doesn't meet the criteria for swimming, full body contact, warm water fishery, etc. And all of the surface waters in the state of Michigan are required to be clean enough proper quality to support agriculture, industrial water supply, public water supply, navigation, boating, warm water fishery, other indigenous aquatic life and wildlife, partial body contact for recreation, and total body contact between May 1st and October 31st, and cold water fishery if applicable. So, and this is, I believe, is related to the Clean Water Act, which, and Molly is going to talk a little bit. She's going to refer to this, I think, in her presentation in a minute. So, just some of the images of what I just said in terms of concerns regarding aquatic wildlife, swimming, fishing, and other indigenous species whose quality, it's impaired because the water has a problem with pollution. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Molly Ripke. Molly is an aquatic biologist with the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, and actually, this is your home stomping grounds, right?
I'm from Temperance. I grew up in Temperance and went to Bedford High School. So it's like a little homecoming.
So we're glad to have you here.
Mules, right? Got hands out. If anybody wants to just take notes on, right? And yeah. I brought just the right amount.
Thank you.
Perfect. Lucky. Yeah. Okay, so the fun presentation up next. Do I have to just hit next?
Actually, looked.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to introduce you to the concept of a total maximum daily load, which at the DEQ we call them TMDL or spindles. Sometimes you hear someone call them that. But we have a total maximum daily load at Luna Pier Beach and the Point Drain. So I'm going to start with some just basic definitions to make sure everybody's on the same page. All of this really starts with water quality standards. So what is it? It's a rule or law that protects water from pollution in order to protect and preserve the use of the water body by humans or animals, which includes livestock, pets, and wildlife. We already went over what the designated uses are. The ones that are most important to what we're dealing with today are the swimming, which is the total and partial body contact, and fisheries designated use. And this last one, which has a really long name, it's the other indigenous aquatic life and wildlife. But really that protects everything other than fish that lives in the water. So that protects your aquatic macroinvertebrates like the bugs, and it also protects animals that have to drink the water, because that's really all they have to drink. So what is an impaired water body? Well, it's any water body that's not meeting the designated uses or the water quality standards. And when a water body is found to be impaired, we list it on what's called the 303D list. So this is where the Clean Water Act comes in. It's the Federal Clean Water Act. And we are required, the state of Michigan, the DEQ, required to basically tell the EPA and the public when we're not meeting the water quality standards. We update this list. We sometimes call it the integrated report. It's on our website. We do it every 2 years. It is thousands of pages long. So it is not a fun read, but if you do find it, it's a PDF and you can search. So you could go in there and search for the point and this water body would come up. So once something is on the 303D list and listed as impaired, we then have to do a total maximum daily load. It's required by the EPA anytime we're not meeting the standards, when it's due to a pollutant. But what is the goal of a TMDL? Really, it's clean water, and it makes everybody happy. But the TMDL itself is not a very exciting process, and people do not love them. does not make everyone happy. That's because it's, it's required by the Clean Water Act, and it involves this lovely formula that basically divides up the pollutant load that a stream can accept into slices of the pie. One slice of the pie goes to facilities or point sources, and the rest of the pie, which is usually, like in the case of this water body, most of the pie goes to non-point sources. There's also this margin of safety, which is the plus or minus error that's involved. So they're really not the most fun documents to read all of the time, but the goal is clean water, and it's a regulatory way of getting to that. So why are we here? Well, Luna Pier Beach is impaired for the total body and partial body contact recreation designated use due to high E. coli. And the point drain is listed as impaired for the warm water fishery and the other indigenous aquatic life use. And that is mainly due to low dissolved oxygen, which also involves, this gets a little complicated, excess nutrients and excess sediment getting into the water from the point drain. We're going to go over first the Luna Pier Beach with the E. coli, and then we'll go over the point drain with the low dissolved oxygen. And like I said, it gets a little complicated, and I'm trying to keep it simple. So if you have any questions, I might skip over something, just let me know. So just to start out with, what is E. coli? Well, it's a bacteria that indicates contamination by warm-blooded mammal fecal material. So we use it in the state of Michigan as an indicator of basically feces coming into contact with the water, and we use it to represent all harmful pathogens that could be in the water. So E. coli in itself might be harmful. We also have things that could be with it, like cholera and giardia and nasty things like that, that are also transmitted that way. So, and we have water quality standards for pathogens, and they're designed to protect human health. There's two. There's the partial body, which applies year-round, and that's higher of the two. It's about 1,000 E. coli, or it is 1,000 E. coli per 100 mils. And that's basically to protect people when they're out doing activities like ice fishing or maybe canoeing in the fall. And we really don't expect you to go head first and ingest water by accident. Hopefully that doesn't happen. And we have a more conservative standard during the summer to protect people while they're swimming, and that's the total body contact standard. It applies from May to October, and there's kind of a two-tier system here. We have a daily maximum, which is 300 E. coli, and we also have a 30-day geometric mean, which is even more conservative at 130 E. coli. And again, these numbers, they apply to all water bodies in the state of Michigan, whether it's the point drain or the beach. It's the same numbers. And they are designed to protect your health. The health department monitors Luna Pier Beach every summer, but the DEQ only did it one summer, and that was in 2005. And we did that to support the development of the total maximum daily load, because that's part of the process. So we had 5 sampling sites along the beach. You can see the city there. And we monitored those for 21 weeks during that summer at these 5 locations. And between 4 and 10 times during the summer, it exceeded the total body daily maximum standard of 300. So 10 times is almost half the summer that it exceeded at one of those sites. And it also exceeded the partial body contact, so that's the 1,000. It exceeded that from 0 to 4 times being pretty bad. So from that, we could determine that it was impaired, E. coli, and did need the TMDL that we were developing. So does anybody have any questions about the E. coli part before we move on to the dissolved oxygen? Okay. So again, the point drain is impaired for low dissolved oxygen, nutrients, and sediment. So this is just your introduction to dissolved oxygen. I'm not an expert on the subject. I'm more of an E. coli expert. But dissolved oxygen is just basically oxygen that's in the water, dissolved in the water, and it's necessary for the respiration of fish and other aquatic life. So it's really important that the dissolved oxygen is in there. And our water quality standard for warm water streams, which the point drain is a warm water stream, is 5 milligrams per liter as a daily minimum. So if the dissolved oxygen falls below that point, fish might be in danger of not being able to breathe. We also have a water quality standard for nutrients, and this is kind of strange when it's not a number like the other two were. It's what we call a narrative standard. Essentially, nutrients shall be limited to prevent nuisance growth, which is a fairly subjective term, of aquatic plants, fungi, or bacteria. And we define nuisance as injurious to one of the designated uses. So it's kind of a fuzzy definition there. And the plant nutrients that we're talking about are nitrogen and phosphorus mainly. So what happens, in a nutshell, is that when you get excess nutrients, like this manure truck here, you get excess nutrients and other oxygen-demanding substances, like untreated sewage or fertilizer or sediment that has nutrients stuck to it. When all that gets into the water, you end up with extra plants, like this nice little stream with the duckweed here. And this is a nuisance because it can prevent things like boat traffic. It can cover up valuable habitat for fish and wildlife. And also, the plants respire at night, and they use up the oxygen. And while they do that, you can get low dissolved oxygen, resulting in acutely toxic conditions for fish and get fish kills. So, this was way back in history. The dissolved oxygen monitoring that the DEQ did had something, I don't even really know why we came here to do this, but it had something to do with that wastewater treatment plant. But in 2000, we monitored upstream and downstream of the wastewater treatment plants. And we found violations of the DO standard as low as 0.8. So remember, it's not supposed to go below 5, but it got down to 0.8, which is acutely toxic to fish. So there could be dead fish in the river at that time. And this was actually found upstream of the wastewater treatment plant. So it wasn't the wastewater treatment plant that was causing this issue. And they found really large daily swings in the dissolved oxygen. They monitored it constantly. And those swings in the DO basically means that there's a lot of plants eating up the oxygen and then releasing oxygen during the day. So we knew plants were to blame for it, and phosphorus is to blame for the excess plants. So in 2006, we came back and did some phosphorus monitoring in the point drain and found that there were excess nutrients. I don't really have any of the details to do on that. So what are the sources of E. coli and nutrients? They're not the same, the sources aren't the same, but they kind of overlap a little, so I lumped them together here. But just remember that E. coli comes from fecal matter, and nutrients don't have to, they could come from chemicals like fertilizer too. So we have two types of sources. There are point sources and non-point sources. Point sources are discharges to surface water that are regulated by the DEQ, by us, through a program called the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. Those are things like wastewater treatment plants or regulated stormwater. Industry sometimes releases water to surface water, like wastewater to surface water, and that would be covered under a NPDES permit too. So those are all point sources. Additionally, those confined animal feeding operations, the CAFOs, those are regulated by NPDES permits as well. But non-point sources is really why we're here today. And those are generally spread over a larger area, and they're not directly regulated by the DEQ unless it's something illegal. Now, a release of raw sewage, however it's done, is illegal, so the DEQ technically regulates that, even when they don't have an NPDES permit. But some examples of non-point sources are unregulated stormwater, which might come from the storm sewers in the city of Luna Pier or any other storm sewer, and also just runoff, what you see here in downtown Lansing after a big storm. And then we have agriculture. The chemical fertilizers that aren't used by the plants may end up running into surface water, and that would be a source of nutrients for the plants. And manure is a source of nutrients and E. coli if manure somehow ends up in surface water. And also residential areas, people use fertilizers on their lawn, and sometimes they use too much. often they use too much. And oftentimes people don't clean up after their pets, which can cause nutrients and E. coli into surface water too. And then there's always wildlife, especially nuisance wildlife, like raccoons or geese that like to congregate near water. Some more important non-point sources are failing septic systems. This is a big one, especially in rural areas. And so there's a picture on the right here of a failed drain field. And this is actually a situation where the failed drain field, it failed. And they got a bad contractor, and the bad contractor hooked the house directly to the stream. So we had a failed drain field and an illicit connection. So an illicit connection is next on our list here. So that's basically when you don't use a septic system at all. You just have a straight pipe that goes from your house, maybe to a tank, but then the tank doesn't go to a field. It just goes directly to surface water, which is illegal, and also is a source of nutrients and E. coli. So, in summary, Luna Pier Beach and the Point Drain have EPA approved TMDLs in place since 2007. So this process we went through a public comment process back in 2007 where we came here and presented all this information to the public and collected comments, then submitted the document to the EPA. Those two documents are on our website if anyone wants to look at them. And these water bodies, they were impaired in 2007 and they're still impaired today. And that's because we really need data to prove otherwise. And once they are no longer impaired, they can be removed from that 303D list that we were talking about at the beginning. So really though, how does the TMDL goal of clean water become a reality? Well, hard work. Wish it were easy. The point sources are really sort of the easy part, especially in a situation like this. The Clean Water Act requires that these NPDES permitted facilities comply with the TMDL. So the permit limits that they get in their permit have to be consistent with the TMDL. And with this TMDL, since it was done in 2007, all that stuff is already in the permits. And so that part of the implementation has already been done. The hard part is the non-point sources. It's hard for a couple reasons. We don't know what they are necessarily. We don't know where they are. And secondly, the DEQ only has authority over certain types of problems, like illegal activities and the point sources. So there's not a lot that we can do except for help other people solve the problems. Most pollution reduction for non-point sources from residential areas and farms is done through voluntary programs and projects like this one. We can fund, that's what the DEQ can do, we can fund people to help us solve this problem. So this is my contact information. It's also should be on your handout. If anybody has any questions now, I'd be happy to answer them. Yep.
Does the algae that we're experiencing on the lake interaction with E. coli and make it worse or go faster? I mean, we've had a tremendous problem with that over the last few years.
Yeah, I don't know that they interact with each other. The E. coli it's from our guts basically, and it doesn't really do well at surviving once it's outside of our bodies. So they're not going to be competing for the same resources, the algae and E. coli. E. coli is going to gradually die off eventually. It might take a while depending on the conditions, so I don't think they're in competition in any way. But nutrients and E. coli are related because a lot of the sources of nutrients are the same as the sources of E. coli. So more septic system problems, they could cause algae blooms and they could cause high E. coli too.
As far as the mixture of the two when they come together?
Yeah, I wouldn't think that they interact really in that way. Yep.
Is the E. coli that you're addressing the type that is found in the gut of only birds and animals?
Warm-blooded animals.
Warm-blooded animals,
Yep.
yes.
So yes, so Fish don't have it, turtles don't have it. But all of us warm-blooded animals do.
I'm wondering if there's any livestock being produced within this watershed.
I don't know the answer to that,
Livestock, you know, driving around this area, not all of the area though. I haven't observed any livestock operations. Is that something that can be eliminated immediately?
Well,
Source?
yeah, actually, Rob and I were talking about that earlier. So the only thing I wouldn't eliminate it quite yet. I would wonder if there aren't livestock operations near here that may bring their manure here to land apply it. So once you've eliminated that, then you probably could eliminate livestock. But it would be important to know if somebody's importing manure. Some of those
I
larger
don't think
feeding.
there are any apples, so-called apples in Monroe County that generate a very large volume of manure.
Yeah, I don't know.
Farmers are only gonna ship that manure.
And some big livestock facilities, even if they're not the CAFOs, they still have enough manure that they ship it out. Yeah, there might be some larger ones. And some of them do have to, they produce so much manure that they have to travel a long way sometimes. It's not very efficient for them, but they do have to get rid of it. It has to go someplace. So it would be worth checking out larger farms within a certain radius, I think, and finding out what their manure practices are.
MDR has a list of the large capitals.
It does.
But large only, I think.
Yeah, we have the same,
Yeah.
because we do regulate them. We
But
regulate.
it's only large, right? It's not medium. I don't know what the number is.
Yeah, the number cutoff changes.
If it changes by the type of animal.
It does. Yeah, it has to do with the number of heads of cattle.
Yeah, my cousin, there's nothing, 2,500 cows. Is that right?
The issue is, again, from my standpoint, from the health, kind of looking at it in the big picture, is it's probably maybe not so much the big ones that are, have some oversight, it's the medium and small ones that.
They have little oversight. Right. Right, that's true.
That probably are not in it, which aren't in the example, right?
No, they wouldn't be. You can often see them on aerial images. So if you just go to Google Earth and scroll around, you can see a lot of the larger ones. Even if they're not regulated, you can see them on there. So that's one good way to find them. Yep.
What do you know about salt? I see a lot of that in this area. Is that, do we know if that is harmful?
Well, it definitely would make more sediments go into the wind drain, for sure. Yeah.
I'd like to hear from them because we don't know.
Cover crops are a really good thing for keeping sediments and E. coli. If they have cover crops and they're putting manure on top of it, the cover crops could stop it from getting into the surface water too.
Especially this year when it's cold and it's got mild again, it's fall filling.
Yeah.
It's great, you know.
Yeah, my neighbor behind my house tilled his property after the derbies came up, and there is dirt everywhere. I mean, his whole field is blowing away.
I don't want to jump to conclusions.
Yeah, no, it can. Yeah, it's
I had another question. With the- I heard you mention the drain commission, that they're involved in this project too.
it's a good word.
Yes, the drain commissioner, actually, they usually are at the meeting, so they might have a conflict with me, but the commissioner's office is part of the committee steering committee.
Okay.
So, Dave Thompson, and Dan Smith is coming to some of the meetings as well.
It seems like their goal is really complete our goals. Their goals are to dump water into the lake as quickly as possible. And we're spending millions trying to clean stuff up for it. It just seems like that's not. And I don't, it's not fair. I can't let that hear about this.
Anyway, else?
I tried something.
Scott Deere.
Yeah, I'm reaching senior needs. So one of the things I did was like, we also deal with the commission and some ag. And we are, yeah. But on the other hand, the drain commission's been around a long time. Name implies what the job is always been about. But there's been a recognition statewide from different counties that the old way of doing things. And need to be looked at again. So I would say, while you're right, there is an impact, and sometimes we're at crossroads. Drain commissioners are starting to come around to try to still fulfill their mission.
Right.
And keep fields dry and to protect property and protect people. But at the same time, trying to keep protecting our water too.
Yeah, we've been bringing this spot for 200 years. You know, 100 years.
Yes.
So like, yeah, really, the way out.
Yeah, and the drain code, majority of the drain code was, still operating. Yeah, but I mean, they've partnered on this project, they're trying to do the right thing. But at the same time, their salaries, so to speak, are paid by the people that they serve. And in Monroe County, a lot of people that they serve are farmers. It's one of those things where, I'll just say now, we're not out to indict anybody.
Right.
We're not out to put anybody on jobs. Trying to figure out, how do you identify what the problems are, where the problems are, and then together figure out how we deal with it and not put anybody out of work at the same time. It's a fun.
All right, any more questions for me?
Feel free at any time you want to, get your questions, please do that. So the next item on your agenda is, so we could go back to my, how should I do that? I think we're just gonna go to, we're gonna go right directly to Scott. Okay. This is Scott Dirks, and Scott is from the GDI consulting firm, and that is the firm that is the consultant project. So, and he knows a lot about the river. Is one of the participants in the river raising watershed management plan and the writing of that plan, and also a lot of the work around Monroe and the dam remediation projects in Monroe, and many others, I'm sure, but those are just a few that you might recognize.
Thanks, Danielle. Good evening. My plan is to give you a little flavor. I'm a hydrologist and a civil engineer. I've been living in the area. I live in Ann Arbor, but I've been working around here, Southeast Michigan, for 17 years now. Like Danielle said, I've been working in the river raising watershed since 2004. So, wow, 11 years now. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the kind of the tracking. I'm referring to it here as environmental tracking, but going back to what Molly said, part of what we're going to be doing is just collecting water quality data. And on one hand, we're going to be looking for problems. On the other hand, if our samples come up with concentrations that are below problem levels, then I suppose there's the potential that the data could be submitted to the DEQ and we can go through the process to delist these impaired water bodies. But that certainly remains to be seen. So I have just prepared a brief, relatively straightforward presentation on the water quality samples we're going to do, how we're going to do it, how long it's going to take, why we're doing it. So our job to try and locate hotspots, if indeed they do exist. I like to think of it as sleuthing, kind of water quality sleuthing. We're going to be looking in particular for, it shouldn't be a surprise now after Molly's presentation, we're going to be looking in particular for E. coli and phosphorus. We'll be looking for some other things too, but in particular, these DMBLs and the problems associated with them, either directly written for E. coli or in the case of phosphorus, it's probably creating the problems, the DO problems. So we are going to sample the main tributaries and waterways through this watershed. So over here is Lake Erie, Loon Pier, here's the point here. The green circles represent our sampling locations. We are going to, basically, this is an aerial shot of the first water quality station. We're going to go and we're going to grab water quality samples. And this plan that we've developed, the idea is just we're getting the main water samples from each of the main waterways and some of the tributaries going up. And these were picked. Basically, we know that a lot of the E. coli, phosphorus, DO problems are in here, along here. So we're working back up to the watershed to see if we can find issues. We will sample. This is just some other shots. These kinds of shots shouldn't come as much surprise. I mean, it's, as everyone knows, it's predominantly agricultural land use. Again, this is on Sulphur Creek, on Telegraph. This is the Warwick and Kuzno drain. Actually, we've got 2 stations on here. And Muddy Creek. And then at the same time that we're grabbing samples, we've tried to schedule this so that concurrently with the health department, so we'll be grabbing samples up to the watershed, and then in the summertime, we're going to try to overlap. We will overlap our sampling period with the sampling that's done for Loon Pier Beach by the health department. The idea with our sampling plan is we literally grab samples, right? We're going to essentially take clean bottles, take them into the water body, grab a sample. The samples are ranged between, I think, a half a liter to up to a liter of sample. We have compiled a sampling team. It includes folks like myself and some people in my office in Ann Arbor, county staff and volunteers. Our goal will be, we have 12 sampling sites that we looked at. We'll be within a day to hit all of those sites, right? So we will be grabbing a sample from each of those 12 sites in the same day. Based on a little bit of field reconnaissance, we've learned that some of these streams they're not necessarily, they don't flow all the time. Some of the flows in these streams are actually driven by rain. They're not all in contact with groundwater all the time. So our goal is to try to grab these samples as much as possible from 9 to 5, so it works with people's schedules and they don't have to be out at night. But grab samples from all 12 locations within a day, hopefully when it's raining or soon after it's raining, so hopefully we've got some flows at all the stations. And we will be grabbing the samples for E. coli and phosphorus. We'll be looking at a couple other things. We'll be looking at temperature and dissolved oxygen and pH, and I left off conductivity. So we'll be looking at not only the things that cause problems, but if there are any dissolved oxygen problems as well. So the other thing that we're going to try to do is we've set up these 12 sites, but through talking to the DEQ, they're not necessarily always going to be the same 12 sites. What we're really trying to do is if we find on a consistent basis, right now we have 5 different times when we plan to go out. So we're going to hit all 12 sites 5 different times, and hopefully we'll do it again in close coordination with rainfall events as much as possible. If we find a site that consistently is high, remember those numbers that Molly put up. Let's say 1,000 E. coli and 100 milliliters. If we find a site that's consistent, say several hundred or several thousand E. coli in 100 milliliters. We're going to go and we're going to try to start working upstream. So if we're below, most of the sites are below the mouth of where two tributaries come together. If we find that we consistently have a hotspot, we'll try to see, is it the north branch, is it the south branch? And we'll try to work upstream. We have also planned a field inventory where we're walking drains, and we're going to be looking for potential sources of these pollutants. Like Molly said, some things may not be evident right away. I mean, you can see here there are some things that are pretty clear. With runoff off roads, rills or gullies that form on fields, concentrated flow, manure piles. Again, some things may be evident as we do stream walks or pull samples, but there may be other things that are not so evident. You may find some pipes, illicit connections that nobody knew about. But again, it'll be a matter of pulling samples, looking for high concentrations of things, doing the draining walks, and looking for signs of where potential sources could be occurring. In addition, for this particular sleuthing, we've added 2 additional techniques that are relatively new in the field of water quality sampling. One is canine scent tracking. This is something that's just come around in the last couple of years. As you're probably aware, dogs are able to smell. I don't know if you had to put it into relative terms. I think they can smell things several orders of magnitude, or 10,000 times. Their noses are something like 10,000 times stronger than our noses. They now have dogs who are trained to scent out human waste, human breathing material. And I've never worked with one. This is the first time I've worked with one. But apparently they've been working with these dogs in other watersheds, a few watersheds in Michigan, and the dogs literally can track our fecal scent back to sources. It is a pretty amazing thing. In fact, you can even send them, I believe you were told you can even mail them water samples, and the dog will let you know if there's an absence or presence of human fecal pollution in the sample. So pretty interesting. So this backtracking, this sleuthing, will also occur with the dogs. So the idea is we kind of tiered this analysis. We go out and hopefully do a couple sampling events, look for hotspots. We're going to walk backwards from those hotspots using our naked eye to look for potential sources. Hopefully, again, narrowing the search. And then the dogs come in. Literally, then the dogs come in, and we found hotspots and traced those as far as we can. We'll try to use the dogs to go even further back, to the extent that we can. The other technique, DNA matching. Again, this is a relatively new technique. It's somewhat expensive in the water quality world in terms of analysis, but they literally can, and I don't know to what percent, something like a 99-point-something% match. If you take your water sample, they run the DNA analysis, and they can tell you if what you're seeing in terms of bacteria, if it's a human source, avian source, bovine source, and I think they can break it up even further. But basically what they have to do is they have to have a library of DNA, and they're essentially take a sample and they match it against their library for different species. So we have also potentially going to be doing some DNA work. Again, like I said, it's expensive. Hopefully when we work backwards, we won't be able to run all our samples. We'll be able to run a handful, a small proportion of our samples. And we think if we found a particular source, we might be able to then use the DNA test to distill down even further what the source actually is.
Where's the DNA lab that will do the work?
It's at Wayne State. And it's a good question because one of the other things about these DNA labs that we've learned is each lab, it's my understanding, I'm not an expert, far from an expert, my understanding is they build a library of DNA. And that library is, I believe, somewhat specific to the locale. I know we were told we could sense that there's a lab, a national lab in Florida, but again, I don't know how much DNA varies, how much a skunk in Florida's DNA would vary from a skunk up in Michigan. I just don't know, but I know that the library is really the key in terms of, they build the library, then they take the samples and they essentially, look at the bases and what the order is, and they just analyze it quickly, so.
The lab in Monroe will do the E. coli,
Yeah.
the phosphorus
Yeah.
testing.
Yeah, that's right.
What type of phosphorus are you looking?
That's another, it's another good question because we're trying to get the lab, the Monroe lab, to do all our testing. And originally we proposed total phosphorus from orthophosphate, which is the form of phosphorus that's available for organic, for plant animal use.
Which one of those is the reactive?
Ortho.
Or, yeah, okay. Ortho.
But I don't think the lab runs ortho. I think they run dissolved. So we're trying to balance the costs and the funds that we have for our analysis versus the analysis we can run.
I believe according to the Toledo Blade, it's the ortho, otherwise called the reactive, that is the phosphorus problem in Lake Erie.
Yeah.
Is that
That's correct.
correct? Okay.
Yeah. But on the other hand, there tends to be a somewhat consistent relationship between total and that ortho. So that there's, like I know I've done some work up in Ann Arbor and the ortho is, I don't know, 40 or 50% or maybe 60% of the total. If you look.
And it's the ortho, otherwise called reactive, that is readily taken up by plants, correct?
Yeah,
That doesn't have to be dissolved any further for take-up.
Right, exactly. Total, I mean, I think of total as really what's absorbed to soil or to some other particulate, right? So this issue with Molly, before we were talking about erosion on fields, that erosion not only is a contributor of sediment, it's a contributor of phosphorus, but how much phosphorus the sediment contributes that's available, that's a different matter. In fact, when the sediment washes off the field, that partitioning of phosphorus to the particulate, to the particle, and that which dissolves, it changes as the sediment washes into the water. So it's a complicated matter, but sediment washing in the fields, in the drains, is a contributor both of sediment and the phosphorus. So gullies and rills and runoff off fields, as I said, those, when we start doing our ground truthing, those are all potential sources. Not so much of the E. coli, probably, but definitely phosphorus. This got cut off a little bit, but as part of the water quality sampling, we have to prepare what's called the Quality Assurance Project Plan. It has a funny acronym, or it's a QAP. But that's anybody in the business of water quality who's going to deal with DEQ, or going to deal with EPA, you put together a QAP. If anybody has questions about how this is being done, anything, who's doing it, when they're doing it, what the techniques are, the forms, everything. It's all in the QAP. So it's a plan. We've done 2 drafts, we've submitted it, hoping to get that approved here soon. Then we're going to do, for volunteers, for everybody who's going to be involved in either grabbing water quality samples or doing ground sleuthing, we're going to offer a class at the end of February where we'll train in a room. And then hopefully, I don't know, this might be a little optimistic, end of March. If this winter proves to be anything like last winter, this will probably slide a little bit. We'll actually get out, we'll have the little meters to measure things like oxygen and dissolved oxygen, and temperature and pH. We'll have bottles and we'll we basically go through the protocol, grabbing the samples, you know, things like labeling the sample, getting the time and the date, the location, writing an ID number. There's something called a chain of custody form, which is when you pass the samples to the lab, it's basically a double check that the bottle that you said was from sample A at the first sampling time is the same sample and result that the lab reports to you when you get the data back. So these are all things we go through in the training. We'll try to get out and do a couple of months of training. If I remember right, Chris, you guys start sampling, is it mid-May or June? Mid-May. Mid-May. So our goal here is to kind of split the difference. We'll start some sampling and then hopefully overlap with you guys through, you know, early summer, mid-summer. And again, this is going to depend. We'll have to keep an eye on the weather. I've been doing this for, well, the first wet weather sampling I did was about 25 years ago. And in those days, you had to hire a meteorologist. The meteorologist would call you 72 hours before a potential rain event and tell you it was on its way. And then he'd call you in 24 hours and say, yeah, it looks even more probable. Now, you all know, all we gotta do is get on that thing and we all become meteorologists. But we'll be looking for, you know, to try to coincide the period when volunteers and staff are available to do sampling when rain hits. A lot of times rain always hits the Saturday at 3 a.m. Makes it really hard to get people out. But we'll try and get that out. And the goal is to start trying to narrow if and where hotspots occur and send out the dogs, do our stream walk. And then actually I show the Lake Erie sampling starting in June, it should start mid-May. But again, that's the idea, is that at some point we're sampling everything all at the same time. And then I'll kind of lead the technical portion of the water quality work. That's my email, and again, Danielle's leading the whole kit and caboodle, so that's my contact up there. Feel free to contact me. I do tend to be kind of busy, but I always tell people just bug me. Eventually I'll get back to you. So with that's my presentation. I wanted to keep it short and sweet. There's certainly a lot more detail. If you have questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
If you identify a hotspot, what's your next action?
To start to work upstream. So we'll
move. Once you identify that, what can you do after that?
Well, after that, we will try to grab samples upstream. Now, where upstream, I would probably say, as you can see, it's kind of a dendritic pattern of streams, right? So most of our samples, and most of our locations are, so for instance, so here's the first station, basically very close to the mouth. And then you'll look at,
so my question, let's take the point up there, your furthest one to the left.
right here, on money.
All right, so you identified a hotspot upstream that you.
Well, we identify, what we'll see is a hotspot here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the hotspot.
That's the hotspot.
We'll say that's a pig farm. What is your next action? What can you do after you identify that hotspot?
Well, if it's that definitive, then what I would probably do, let's say, you know, we figure out there's a potential source here. The next time we go out and sample, I would probably sample here, and I'd sample here.
Okay.
And if indeed this is the hotspot, what's going to happen is this will come up clean and this will come up hot.
Yeah. And what?
Okay, yeah, I think this question is,
Yeah.
you're doing all the
Yeah.
investigative work. Is the next step to contact that
Yeah.
property owner and
We'll
say,
say that.
you are a problem? That's what he's stating there.
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. So this project is not about punitive actions, but it certainly would be. And I don't know. This isn't something we've necessarily discussed, and I don't know what the protocol would be. But it would certainly seem like the next action would be to try to talk to the potential offending source.
So there's no legal action or nothing that you can do to alleviate the problem. All you do is identify that's the
That's
problem.
correct. I mean, I mean, as you know, right, I mean, chances are if we did find an offending party or someone that we thought the evidence suggested was an offending party and then approach them, which is something we could do, we'd have no power to compel them to do anything. It would simply be a conversation. And I don't know, what are the chances that somebody who's been called out as a problem would want to talk to us? I don't know. All we can do, all we're charged to do is basically to say, we have this evidence that suggests that this is a potential problem. And then if we can't establish some line of communication, the next thing that we can do is essentially say, this is what we would suggest as a remedy. But there is nothing we can do to compel anybody to do anything. I think the word voluntary has been used, thrown around a couple times tonight. Well, I don't know, DEQ, you can respond, but I don't think you can compel them to do anything either. Is that?
We are a voluntary program,
Yeah.
and we can make monies available to do corrective actions through emergency or $3 million.
I mean, the only other thing that could happen would be, that I can imagine would be, if for some reason they should have had a permit, and they didn't, then that might be one place where the DEQ could say, right? Am I right about that?
Yeah, with a farmer, that would be a likely scenario.
Right.
We've already talked about there's not any really large farms.
Right. So that likely is probably. But it's a good question because I mean, it really what you're asking is, okay, so what do you do?
Yeah. You can identify a hotspot in every one, and if nothing gets done, we still have the same problem.
That's
all
correct.
all we've done is identify the problem.
Well, a really realistic possibility is that someone's out walking the streets of this project and they find an illicit connection of somebody's septic system that's got a pipe right to the creek. So in a situation like that, you would report it to the health department.
That would be available.
Yes.
But
the health
I think in
department.
the grand scheme of things, that's probably a small amount. They can probably.
You find illegal activity.
Correct.
And I think I'm correct in saying that at the time when some of the E. coli work was done, and some of the DO work, some of the treatment plants hadn't finished upgrades or were planning upgrades. So I know there have been some upgrades and some point sources that have been taken out of the watershed, so to speak. So again, you may find things are better, I don't know. I'm just saying there have been some things that have occurred for the better, I guess, environmentally.
Well, it's fair.
Exactly. What we say is that it's like a death by a million cuts, right? And if you're gonna fix them, it's sometimes a long road.
The problem with phosphorus entering Lake Erie has been a long-term problem. Were there certain conditions this past summer that brought conditions to a head that caused a couple 100,000 people from primarily the Toledo area drinking water, that this problem manifested itself?
And part of that, again, I can tell you what I understand is it's a piece of the puzzle. But there's been an interesting kind of ecological phenomenon that's happened over there. And it's the phosphorus issue coupled with zebra mussels. So my understanding is, particularly near shore, the zebra mussels have actually clarified the water, right? So they're filtering the water, they're getting a lot of solids out of the water column. Now, sunlight is able to extend much further into the water column. And you're getting these algae growths there are algae that grow on the surface of the bottom, there are algae that grow on surfaces of plants, and there are algae that grow in the water column. And they're occupying all those niches now because the water's been cleared up by the zebra mussels. So I know that's also part of the problem on the western Lake Erie.
Or clogged intake too.
Yes. Yeah.
Were the wind conditions just ideal to blow all of those types of blue-green algae to the
They
intake site.
got some on Cleveland, but, they had a severe problem, even muscle clogging the intake, I don't remember the number of it. It goes up, where there's a lot of water.
Right.
Clogging the intake, so the water couldn't get into the intake, you had to go up and clean the intake to get the water into the crib itself.
Oh, and I think the number of mussels that are on that intake screen, probably thousands, hundreds of thousands, I mean, they're little creatures, yeah, in the millions. In fact.
One thing I should point out the DEQ is doing this summer, and we have been for the past couple summers, is we are monitoring several beaches on Lake Erie for phosphorus and chlorophyll A and some other algae type or algae-related parameters. I'm not sure exactly which. I know they take periodic persistent samples, but not on a regular basis. And this summer, we will be doing that again. Luna Pier is one of the beaches that we monitor. And so it seems to me that that data would be valuable. Yeah, so I have contact information for the DEQ staff.
Was it the card that?
That would be Kevin Goodwin.
Okay, great.
He knows more about Lake Erie and the algae stuff than I do. So I can't answer any questions to do.
And do you know, well, I'll call Kevin, but I mean, is it all summer long? Is it, you know, when it started?
Most of the summer.
Most of summer?
He gave me the dates. I don't know.
I'll get in touch with him later on.
It's an every other week card.
Now, if a point drain like right able to appear there, when you do a sample that, the water flow changes.
Correct.
When, is that?
Confound the
Yeah,
results.
is that
Absolutely.
It's a variable.
It is a variable, and it'll be one of those things that we will pay attention to. One of the things I didn't mention is, we will, I guess, kind of semi-quantitatively measure velocity and flow. And because part of the folks who will be doing this are going to be volunteers, we're trying to make it relatively straightforward, which is essentially streets are flowing. You know, just block off whatever, 30, 50 feet, measure the time that it takes the float to get there, measure the depth, the width of water, and make an estimate. You'll have an estimate of velocity and then how much water is actually moving volumetrically, flow-wise. Down here, now one of the things that we also know is not only does the flow shift, but sometimes it's almost completely stagnant, which is probably in some cases actually contributing to some of those low DO products. Now things are not flushing through, whatever organic was there, it's getting eaten up, it's getting chewed up, and we're losing oxygen. So, absolutely. We'll absolutely be trying, every time we're out there, to account for which way is the water going, and then what it means to the result if the water's coming the other way, that remains to be seen how we're going to interpret that. I mean, some might say our E. coli problems are, from Toledo, or they're from Detroit, but if I remind you what Molly had said about E. coli, they do have a relatively short, so to speak, shelf life. Once they get out into the environment, I can't remember, how long they can survive, but I think it's on the order of a couple of days, tops, max. And it's partially a function of UV. Once they get exposed to UV, it starts to break down and die. So, do these other, we know there's lots of stuff that comes from these big municipalities. Does their water affect the concentrations here? We won't be able to, I don't think, to answer that definitively. What we've been tasked with is to answer the question, is this a potential source of the problem here? We will look at, but we won't be doing complicated, engineering, modeling analyses to figure out what the load is and how long it takes to get here, and is it possible that the problem's here or up here. We'll be looking at it, but not in a really detailed way. It's a, that issue, can this get here and impact here? That's a complicated, very complicated question. My gut is kind of doubt it, but I very well could be wrong, particularly if you get a long short current up here, bringing this up within a matter of hours, maybe Toledo, but I can't say for sure.
And we'll move on to one more item, and then you may have more questions for Scott. Was that your question?
No.
The last part of the agenda that I want to talk about is the landowner survey that we're going to be conducting as part of the project. And we refer to it as a social monitoring component. And what has been very helpful in non-point management projects to not only conduct the environmental assessment, but also take a look at what are the social indicators that people's behavior, basically. What choices do people make in terms of that impact the environment? And so we will be doing a survey, a public opinion survey, and because it will do a number of things. It will tell us what people's attitudes are about the water quality, what they might think are the sources, what are the causes, what might be some things that would help the problem. It will tell, because we'll be asking questions like this. What are your concerns? Do you have concerns? Are you worried about the water quality, or is it okay? So we'll be asking about that. We'll also be asking about people's interest in different practices that might help resolve the problem. So how open are people to changing behavior, because it is voluntary, right? So we want to get at that. We want to understand that dimension, because that until we know that, we can't shape any of the education programs or the information that we provide to the residents in the watershed, and how we're going to provide technical and financial assistance. So we'll be doing a survey. We've drafted it. We also are required to do a QAP, a Quality Assurance Project Plan, for the public opinion survey. So that is about 99% finished. We are just about done with the survey. This is a process. We're going to be doing 2 separate surveys. We're going to be sending one survey to farmers, to all the farmers in the watershed, and then we will be sending a survey to a sampling of the residents in the watershed that are not farmers. So the surveys will be a little bit different. Obviously, they'll be geared to different interests, different needs, different practices, and so on. So that will be the way in which the surveys will be done. We'll be mailing the survey. This is not the final one, but it looks like this. We'll be mailing it to the landowners. It's a confidential survey, so there will be a number on it, but the number is only to identify whether it has come back in again, that has been returned. Because if it hasn't been returned, we're going to send another reminder letter and a postcard and so on. So once someone finishes the survey and they send it back in, we just take them off the list and send them a thank you, and they're done. We will be doing this we're starting this at the end of February into March. So they'll be going out, we'll be sampling around, we're working with the Conservation Office, we're working with the Drain Commissioner's Office, so we can have a database. We'll be randomly selecting, other than the list of farmers, we'll be randomly selecting who's going to get a survey. The person who receives it, they can also do it online. They don't want to do it and mail it back to us. They can complete it online. They'll receive a passcode, an ID response passcode, so they can go right online and do it that way. It'll probably take about, I don't know, maybe max 30 minutes. I don't know if it'll be more than that. And we will be then doing all the data entry from and analysis once we get all that back in, May through the summer. And then we'll be, we can report back, but that will help us also shape the education and outreach plans and initiatives that will be written into the watershed management plan. So once and technical assistance that might be available, financial assistance, let's say to help someone with a failing septic system. So there could be some financial if that's listed as something that would be an action that would be included in the watershed management plan, it could be eligible for, once it's approved, once the plan is approved by the Michigan DEQ, then there would be funds available subsequently to implement some of those actions. So that's why it's really important to find out what these beneficial practices are and best management practices could be, so that once they're identified and people are, they would address the problem, they can be included in that plan. And then funding could be available. I know for the River Raisin Watershed Management Plan, I was at a meeting earlier, or last year at the annual meeting for the River Raisin Watershed Council. And I can't remember the number, but millions of dollars have been granted to different groups, individuals, to implement some of the actions that were identified in that plan. So it does happen, and that will be hopefully something that will happen here. I think that, just trying to see if there's anything else on the survey. I think that's it on the survey. So if you receive a survey, please complete it. If you know someone that got one, please encourage them to send it back in, because we really need it. We really need to get the information, because that's the only way we can work together and help solve any water quality issues, but also make sure that we have a watershed and we have a Great Lakes basin that is healthy and is protecting life for all species, not just for us and for future generations. So it's really, really something that, while we're talking about a lot of the technical components which we need to have and which are a part of it, it goes to a much bigger question in terms of our quality of life and future, of our families and our home and our livelihood. So I wanted to just say that to you. We could have done this at the beginning, but I was kind of rushing in because I lost my way on my way here. So if you wouldn't mind, I would love to know, I know you signed in, but if you wouldn't mind just going around and saying who you are and where you live, or anything that you want to say about why you're interested in coming to the meeting. So, is that with you, sir?
Bill Fry, Township Supervisor here, and I live on the watershed.
Great. Thanks, Bill.
Jim Gardner, Luther City Council, and who else is on here?
Great.
Rick Murray, I'm a council member and live right on the lake.
Nice,
I live here.
thank you.
Stacy Grimes, council member of Blooming Care, and I live on the lake.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Larry Felbach, I'm a retired high school science teacher. Taught science at Ida High School for 30 years. Wasn't the only place that I taught, but I'm currently on the board, and one of the things that the students at Ida did is we tested ground and surface water on and near the river basin for years. So my students did some of the tests that will be running this project. So.
Bob Meyer, I work at the Monroe Conservation District, and I'm also a farmer, not in this watershed, I'm in the river township.
Scott? We know Scott, so anything else you want to share with us? We're happy you're here on the project.
I'm Pete Vincent, DEQ Conflict Source Solution. And I do want to discuss this, that we are a non-regulatory program. We will identify things to do, and it's up to the people to want to do them. We will provide funding for those implementations via these. But I just want to be real clear about that.
Not Rob Slusky, I'm also with the DEQ Conflict Source Financing, and I'm the grant administrator for this project.
And I'm Holly Rickey, I'm an aquatic biologist. I grew up in Temperance, so not far from here, and I used to come visit when it appears a kid to see Wayne.
Chris Westover from the Monroe County Health Department.
Alex Lucia from Monroe, from Cleveland, so I'm used to my water out here at Chick-fil-A.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex. And again,
Matthew Krang, I live in Temperance, real close to here, but also helping out with the River Aeration Institute on some projects.
and with the ISD.
Monroe County ISD, yep.
Okay, any other questions from anyone? Yes,
About Powder Community Conservation District, one of the things that we offer to farmers and landowners is a program called MEAT, Michigan Agriculture Environmental Assurance Program, that on a voluntary, non-regulatory, confidential basis, we will come on to farmers and landowner properties and help them identify environmental risks. Chemical or fuel storage issues, manure issues, or things like that. And then, based on what's found, there's different programs through the USDA, Natural Resource Conservation Service, to help provide cost share, help provide financial assistance for both farmers and other landowners to take care of some of these things. Presently, there's, I think, 17 or 18 farms in Monroe County that are verified through this voluntary system, which means when somebody like myself come onto the property, identify risks if they're present, and help the landowner, farmer, whatever, take care of it, solve them, and then basically have a place audited by the Department of Agriculture. Farm, I like my operators to do that. I'm sort of surprised that it's on. We're not the ones who are mad or
don't look at us.
Yeah.
Don't point at us. There you go.
Yeah,
Thank you, Bob. Thank you.
I have a comment regarding this problem. By our very existence, all of us contribute to this problem. And so we need to examine the way we live. I can cite one example of a very good neighbor of ours in many respects, but they heat their home with wood. And where do they dispose of their ashes? In the creek that flows near our property. And someone here probably has more knowledge about the content of phosphorus in wood ash more than I would, but that's not the proper way to dispose of something like that. Nor is putting it out with your trash. You know, if it's fertilizer, which it is, then find some place to spread it and spread it in. Just one. There you go. I don't spread any phosphorus fertilizer because I did look up once how much phosphorus is in wood ash. It's not a tremendous amount, but that is my source of phosphorus, what little is needed because I do soil testing that's needed in my pasture fields. And something else, when was the last time you heard of a property owner that owns a lawn that has ChemLawn or some of these other outfits that will fertilize your lawn that has had their lawn soil tested? I don't know anybody. So, use your imaginations. There are all kinds of ways that we contribute to the problem, and we all need to recognize that.
I think that's a good point, because I think that's part of what this planning process should do, through the I&E strategy, to start to call out some of these kinds of things, to make people aware. And you have to start with raising people's awareness and then educating on these kind of things. That's part of this process should do.
What's the point of involving your high school students, in my case, of so many years of testing, if you don't point out these kinds of things to your students? No, they always like it. go to the river to grab water samples, check out the mackerel invertebrate populations, which are small animals in the river. They enjoyed those field trips, and they enjoyed using the testing equipment to run our tests. But you have to then check why we do those kinds of things. That was another pure enjoyment aspect.
Where do you go to year one testing? That might be a great start, just the awareness of where to have your one testing before you put them.
That's a good.
I don't fertilize the lawns, so.
But that's right.
But for our well water, I would send the samples up to,
I would go to one of the co-ops. I don't live co-op. I'm not sure about maybe it would not be the way to go places. No. My project was
I don't think extension might do it.
well, not essentially doesn't.
They don't.
They, if they're lucky, they'll have, sometimes they have sample containers that are like pre-addressed mailing containers for Michigan State University for analytical. Say sometimes not makes sense, it's just not always available. If you want to deal with MSU, it's easier online. And order the, should be about, sure. Any kind of yard, you could walk around and poke through a whole list and get kind of where to do the sample and send one, and not nutrient level on the other side.
yeah, I do on a pretty regular basis send samples from pasture fields up to the soil testing lab.
MSU has a, in my opinion, has a lot nicer report. It's just,
Brand
it's
new.
more difficult to do, and it is just,
Probably a great grant. Test people's lawns. Probably a great grant project to test people's lawns.
Right, I mean, these are the kinds of things that can be included in the
Money well spent.
education, involvement and education component of the project. So
Right.
you need to raise awareness about, here's the practical things that you can do that aren't that hard.
Yeah, I know some of the people, just, some is good, more better, too much is good,
well,
Okay, so, if you don't have any more questions, we're finished for tonight's meeting. But there might be some more, anyone? If you'd like to take anything to go, please. I always have more than we need, but the coffee is still warm, hot. I mean, there's to-go cups and everything, and that we'll just have to throw away. So if you want to take anything for your ride home or whatever, please feel free. And thank you again for coming. And we'll let you know when we have the next meeting.
thank you.
Yeah.